haven't the slightest clue why talking about grief is on my spirit right now, but many of you know that my best friend, Ayel, died in October. I'm recording this in June 1st, and he died October 5th. Um, my other best friend, Tiara, died in May 2020. And so a lot of people have asked me, not kind of in a roundabout way, like, how are you okay? So sometimes people would say, like, oh, that has to be so difficult. How are you holding up? Or like, you can't be okay. Or like just comments that make it clear to me that really the question is, how are you okay? Like, I couldn't go on. How have you been able to go on? Or like, my personality would have changed, or I wouldn't be joyful. I see how you're still smiling, I would still be sad. And the thing is there's so many ways that I've individually dealt with their deaths, and um and then collectively dealt with losing both of them. And I think that's the thing about grief. It's very complicated. So I think I just want to talk about grief in its entirety from like beginning to end so that you all can understand where I'm coming from. Number one, people have learned that grief is stuff that has stages, that there's like denial, I don't remember the other ones because it's not true. Rejection of it, just anger, it, that acceptance. That's not how it goes. I mean, if anything, I'm talking about this right now because I just cried thinking about something, and I haven't really cried or been sad about Ayel when I think about him in a couple of months, really. And he died like 6 months ago, and I haven't been sad in months. Um, so I, I talk about this in another article, um, uh, Unmothered, to the unmothered on Mother's Day. And I talk about this book by um, Melissa Kelly with two L's, Kelley, two L's and then an E. She talks about grief as a mosaic, multi-pattern like this, like pieces of glass that are, after something breaks, coming together to become something new. And how grief is more about the coming together, and grief looks like that it doesn't look like something linear. It really goes in waves and goes around in circles. So you may be acceptant of something one day that they're gone, and then another day you're really angry, or you might be angry first and then in denial later. So the idea that grief is just this one thing is why I think it makes it so hard for people. I think sometimes when I talk to people about being grieving, they're talking about grief, and they're not talking about grieving, and grieving and grief are two different things. Grief is something that someone hands you. Grieving is what you do with the grief. You have to make something with the grief. You sit there with it. And that's the first step. You just sit there and you look at it and you say, this is all the ways that this is affecting me. And you look at it from every angle. And then you have to make something with the grief. You make a cake, you make tears, you make a painting, you make yourself call off work. There's things that you continue to do to go through the process of dealing with the separate aspects of what that grief is. So for me, when I lost here, her family is very prominent where we live. And I'm not even going to get into all the details of that in this space, but that led to the the cause of death being kept private. Um, and that was difficult because it was very sudden, and there was a lot of unresolved feeling that I had with like a lack of closure because it was in the middle of COVID and George Floyd happening. It was the same week so that George Floyd was murdered. So that was difficult for me because I know that I just didn't know what it was, I couldn't even put it anywhere. I always talk about, me and my husband always talk about this, when someone young guys, you don't even know where shelf to put it on. Where are my shelves? This is my daughter's room, by the way, but my, her shelves that I'm in. Which shelf do I put this on? Where does this go? I don't know where this goes. My 95-year-old grandfather was suffering. Okay, cool, top tier, good life, time to go. That's where you put that. Like, I don't know where to put that when a young person dies. So, or when a child dies, you don't know how to go on sometimes with that because you don't know how to begin grieving because you don't know where to place it. So the other thing with Tiara passing was that we both had young sons that we hoped would meet each other one day and play together when COVID died down. And that can never happen again. And even though her family is, they know me and love me, I mean, she's not going to be there if we're together. The other thing was I had contacted her dad multiple times to say congratulations about all the stuff that I said they're very proud and they were involved in, and the messages bounced back. So there was also some lingering guilt I had about, like, do they know that I still care and love their child, especially because I chose not to go to the funeral because it was in the middle of COVID. So that's actually separate emotions that I just told you about. That's grief, um by itself, of like, oh, I just lost someone, so I'm sad. But there's so sadness, there's embarrassment, that and guilt that I didn't know if they know I still love her. um did she talk about me to them recently? I mean, I had talked to her, but it doesn't mean that she told them, like, oh, she still loves and cares about me, like if I was to die next week, and then there is just a loss of, like, a future loss, and then a current loss. There's a current loss of the friendship, but then there's a future loss of, like, a vision I saw for our kids. Okay, that's one person. I met Sierra at our high school that we all went to, which was a year after I met Ayel. Me and Ayel went to school in 8th grade together, and then we went to the same high school together. So all of them, we were all friends. So losing Ayel was separate emotions. Number one, I just, oh, it's so hard to talk about this sometimes. I um I felt like I lost, like, the last person that truly knew me in this world. And I remember we went to go see Black Panther, like, a month or so later, which is crazy because he came up for his birthday to Philly where I was living prior, and we went to go see the first Black Panther when my older son was little, when I dressed him up like a African Baba, and he had a like a dashiki wrap, like not even dashiki, like a ceremonial looking wrap on his shoulder, and he had a vest little goofy on him that was like tilted, and or a headdress in Yoruba. And he had these elephant earmuffs on because the movie was loud. So literally, like, I've been through so much with him. And I told and during the movie, I mean, sorry, spoilers if you haven't seen Black Panther 2 yet, it's been time, but I I remember that it was such a beautiful breakthrough moment for me in that movie because that movie really touched grief very deeply. M'Baku is with Shuri after she just lost Queen Ramona, like she just lost her mom. And he's like, like, how are you? And she's just like, I mean, I'm good. Like, what's up? Because M'Baku is all focused on war and strategy. But he's like, but how are you? And she just really, gave him the company line. He was like, no, but like, how are you? How are you inside? Like, how you be? And she had to be like, how do you think I just lost everyone in the world who truly knows me? And that really made me so sad to even see that. Like, I was in that movie. I've always run a private theater since COVID. I was in that movie with a friend I've known for like maybe 4 or 5 years, doesn't know me, like my best friends knew me. My husband's best friend, who I'm still getting to know because I've only been married for, well, I've been with my husband for like 5 years. We've known each other for like 15 years. I didn't even meet his friends until the last like 5 years. So I've been friends with that friend for 5 years compared to 20 years with my other friends, as well as me and my husband were best friends, and because we got married, it shifted. So I used to call him my guy best friend, and now you're my gay best friend. It shifted parts of myself that he needed to know in a different way. because he's now in a relationship with me. So a part of our friendship died a little bit when we got married. And that's sad, but that's his own thing. And like, that's why I can seriously say that like my friends who've stayed friends with me throughout these changes know me for real. And my husband doesn't know me the same way y'all knows me. Um, what's so crazy is that this grief has opened up so many ways of my husband becoming friends with me again in that aspect. Even if I'm mad at him, I can talk to him as if he's not him, or even if we're going through something, I can be like, hey, as a counselor and as your friend, I just want to say you should tell your wife. Like I really put a different hat on sometimes when I'm talking to him, and even that grief has opened up another part of him being able to be friends with me in that way. And it's just so interesting how that happened. But I'm just expressing to you about the gravity of the different ways that grief was different. So losing one friend was one way that had some aspects of sadness, of guilt, of loss. But then losing my other friend had some aspects of like finality, of like I'm really never gonna have 20-year friends again. And I might. And so my therapist said I might, and I might also meet new people who know me deeply. And it's turned out to be like one of the loveliest things about like I'm back on the market to like make friends at 32. So there's some aspects of loss, there's some aspects of finality, that death feels like super final with them, whereas death with other people, because have such interesting spiritual gifts, death has always felt very fluid for me, even when I was a child. So this felt so final for me, so final. And then there was some aspects of future yearning, of like loss of like things that we'll never get to do together. We wanted to take a trip in 2024 to celebrate 20 years. We were on like year 19 or something. Um, and there's some loss of like he was going to come stay with me and be a nanny for our child. We had always planned that. And like that was abrupt for me to have lost him in that way. There was some aspects of let me think of some of the other feelings that I feel. Just some daily familiarity, That's, let's say if you lose a friend that you talk to all the time. I didn't talk to y'all every day, but I was the person I call when I mess up my food. I was the person I call when I want to vent. I would have lost my ever loving mind if it wasn't for him at some periods in my life. My ex and me were together for 3 years, and his ex and him were together for 6 years, and we broke up the same week. So we stayed on the phone with each other 24/7, go to the bathroom, sleep, fall asleep 24/7 until we got through it for probably like 3 or 4 weeks, almost a month straight. Um, he wasn't working, and I was working for my ex, and I was in graduate school, and I got really sick. And so I had taken a semester off. So we were on the phone all day, and I almost lost my mind. And he was there for me, and I was there for him. So there are some aspects of the closeness of somebody not even being able to celebrate with me in the future successes as well, because someone who's seen me go through everything, seeing me go from being with someone like my ex to now back with my best friend from college, that type of thing. He died thinking I was having a baby. I actually had a miscarriage and lost that baby. But that's so crazy to me because the other part of it was like just this heaviness that he told our other friend to not tell me that he was in the hospital. So he was still talking to me and he was sick in the hospital. Because he thought I was having a baby and I wasn't. I lost a baby, and he could have had me for him during that time. But now I want to get into the ways that I soothe that, because all of those things are separate, right? So those are separate feelings that grief presents. And that means that there's some things that are just final, but then there's something like your boss dies, and that sucks, but it's over for you in a lot of ways. But then there's some things that are going to keep going. So there's things that are just going to rush back into your day or come back into your life that make you sad again, or that make you angry again, and make you in denial. All those things that we think are the parts that usually happen come up in different times. And it doesn't mean that you're not doing the work. It doesn't mean you're not doing the stuff. It doesn't mean you're not grieving. It just means that grief is a living thing that has to be worked through. And so, um, with Tiara, I started my business. I started my White Ally Boot Camp. That week, I stayed up for like a week. I slept for like 4 hours at a time. I was pregnant. I was just up sleeping. I mean, up working, not sleeping. And I started my business because I was like, I want to help people who are out there, but I want to stay in, I want to be safe. People are protesting. I feel like I want to help people find each other. And I just know that like the morale, not the morale, mortality of what we're facing. I gotta find something that can be lucrative and help me pay my bills, whether I'm up or down or not. And I started my business. Now, something similar happened to me with Ayel, where he died right when I was in the middle of a grant cycle. Because I wasn't like destitute, um, because of that gift of Tierra passing and me using that grief to start my business in that aspect. I had already had a business in consulting for businesses, but then I moved it into direct services. That helped me connect with new people. That helped me make friends in different areas and different industries. I yelled for on the other aspect. I was able to say, I'm a sit Shiva. My teacher in fourth grade, her mom died and she wore black for an entire year as they do in the Philippines. I'm done. I'm not doing any grants. And I was snappy and I was short and I just for like a month and I just would, I would say like my mom, I would say, hey, I'm still grieving. I'm sorry. I don't want to joke like that. And I would say to my kid, like, hey, mommy's sorry. I need to step away. And my son, he's so funny because he's 5.5 and he didn't know this could like happen to someone. And he's always now kind of coming up with solutions. And he's like, I'm gonna become a doctor so I can bring a yellow. How are you going to do that? He's like, I'm gonna use dog bones and jam and I'm gonna piece them together and I'm gonna make him come back. And I was like, so you're gonna make a zombie? Okay. Love that for me. And I love that for you. But like even just talking with um my child about what it means to be friends with someone and what it means to be like, I got to spend 20 years with this person. And I think that's the other half of what has made me mostly like not sad when I'm still thinking about him months later. Because I mean, every single Facebook memory is me and Tierra, and I yell every, it's not like it's not something I'm going through daily. I am, which is something to remember about bringing up grief with people. You don't have to worry about bringing it up. They're thinking about it. You don't have to worry about like, oh, their wife passed. Let me not bring. They know that they're already like it's a part of their daily life. That's how they're not falling apart. That they have to. It's something they have to go through every day. It's like a garden. You have to tend to and water it and walk through it and let the sun hit your face and just stand there and be like, what is growing today and what is dying today? Um, if this it's just this like this dance, this waltz that you're doing with your friend, with the memory, with the death itself, with the circumstances. And it's a dance, it's not a one-time thing. You dance with it, you wrestle with it. And you and then you die a little bit every day until it just gets better. And you just end up being renewed more than the death. And that's when it hurts less. It's when you cry less. And it happens. It really does. It really, really does. I'm here to show you it does. Um, and so I I really I lost my train of thought. I was talking about the fact that you have to go through and it's something that you have to really take on and recognize. Well, anyway, I'm gonna get about friendship. I had 20 years with two people as loyal, dope, amazing friends. And it's more than a lot of people could say. And so now at this point, I look at it from that perspective about what I did have as opposed to what I'm not going to have in the future. And so that's one way. Number two, crying, screaming at the moon in my driveway to tell my husband I'm going outside, put on our car, listen to music, and just cried on the asphalt. Just my house, the driveway's not on the street, and my neighbor, um, she took a job in another state, so it's just me and the moon out there just crying. And it's not why God, it's just, oh, this hurts. This hurts. And I gotta let it hurt, let it heal. And so dance with that pain, walks with it, move with it, let it be. Because it can't be anything else if you don't let it be in the first place. Grief is just going to be, but grieving is how you break it apart into those little teeny pieces. And the beautiful thing about the analogy of the mosaic is that it's always going to come back together as a masterpiece with something that's completely new. A lot of grieving never happens because we see the grief and we're like, nope, walking around it, nope, stepping over it, nope, no, pushing it back. You want it to be just like the moment before. If you could just go back, if you just called me, there's no that earth anymore. There is no that reality. There is no that place in history and time. That was then, and this is now. Never going to happen again. You cannot go back to the moment before. You can't go back to the way it was. You don't even exist that way anymore. And so there's no version of grieving that involves reminiscing or daydreaming about how to make it the way it was. You have to decide where the pieces fall in the new picture. And it comes back together as a thing it's never been before. It's so beautiful, right? So those are just some ways. And I think the other thing is I do want to talk about the Buddhist principle of equanimity, because that helps me very deeply. Equanimity is the principle that things are just as they are and they come just the way that they've been. And they're handed to you just like that. Let the chips fall where they may. Or Black people, we say it is what it is. And I always say it's going to be what it's going to be too. It just is what it is. There's not some need to add another meaning to it or a reason or a testing or pushing or pulling. That is a marionette God that is pulling on us and making us dance and making us be a certain way. And sometimes things just are what they are. It was just their time. And it's not to say there's not a higher power that makes it just their time, but how it affects you in particular. We can ascribe anything we want to that, and it's not necessarily helpful. Just because a feeling is real doesn't make it true. Remember, I always say that, which I got from Tara Brach, who's amazing, Buddhist leader that I've learned everything from. It can be real and not true. So it can be real that I feel that this death has done this for me, but it doesn't make it true. But the truth is irrelevant. How you make it work and how you feel about what you've been given is the power. I feel that I was given these cards, and this is what I think I'm gonna do to play. I feel that the chips just fell where they may, but this is how I'm gonna go all in. I feel that it rained today just because, or because someone else needed some rain and it just happened to hit me. And this is how I'm gonna grow. And so you really, sorry, someone's up in my house. Learn to look at the grief, just like you look at a lot of things, especially in Buddhism, as a thing in front of you. What is this here to show me? A gift sometimes. If you want to look at it from a positive perspective, there's nothing wrong with that. What is this here to show me? What can I learn from this? There's a poem by Rumi, R-U-M-I, who's Beyonce's, one of their twins are named after, called Guest Houses. And Guest Houses talks about there's the emotions that come in the guest house every day. A new meanness, a new unwanted worry that shows up in like a boarding house kind of guest house in the countryside. Rumi describes, because Rumi's a Sufi poet from like the 4th century or something. He talks about them knocking pictures off the walls and just coming too long to say. And instead he starts to think, why are you here? It's the best way you can go forward. What are you doing here? What can you show me? Tell me some stories about your travels. Why are you here? That's one of the best concepts that helps me. And then the last one is about the universality of suffering. And I apologize in advance if you've heard me tell this story because I tell it all the time, but it's one of my favorites. So there was a woman who woke up to her child who had passed away. And she scoops her child up in grief and crying. And she bursts out her home into the middle of the town square. And she says, "Why, God, why is this happening to me? What is happening? Why is trying to bring him back?" And everybody watches her day in and day out. I mean, this goes on for like 2, 3 days, and she's just sitting there. And someone finally says, "We should do something. Send her to the shaman, the wise old man." Go over to her and they tell her, "Hey, we know someone who can help you." She said, "You can bring my son back." And they said, "Yeah, just go up the countryside in that narrow path that we never walk, and there's going to be a light. Hurry." She hurries off into the countryside, goes up the little narrow path, and there's a light on at the top, a little teeny abode. And it's a wise old man, of course. And he says, "I know why you're here. I see you love your son." She says, "I do, but something's wrong." And he says, "I can help. Go back into town and go house to house to house, asking for mustard seed from each house for a special elixir, and it'll fix your problem with your son. But it has to be a home that loss has never touched." And she says, "Okay, I'll do it right away." And he says, "Make sure it's soon. Night's falling." And so she goes in the dusk and she asks house to house to house, and everybody's cooking dinner and opening the door for her and so happy to see her. Disturbed to see her with a child in her arms who needs rest. But they say, "This is all I have. I have a mustard seed, but I did lose my crops last year. Does that count?" Next house, "I have a mustard seed, but I just lost my child as well in the womb. I have a mustard seed, but I lost my mother. I don't know if it's going to count." She gathers all the mustard seeds she has, tainted, hopeless. She goes up the hill. She says, "I don't even have any time before it's dark, or I'll stumble and fall and drop my baby." It's up the countryside to a hill that they don't pass. Goes up the little path they never walk up. Gets to the house, the light's still on. And she says, this is what I have. And I don't think any of them are going to work because every single house I went to, every person in town has experienced a loss before. And he said, "That's your elixir. And go bury your child." And she went off into the countryside and she buried her child. And he rested, and she went home and she rested as well. That is a Buddhist story, and that is supposed to be the earliest story of the mustard seed faith. Every time I tell this story, it's about something different. But the universality of loss is really what this story is about. And I focus on different things when I tell a story because it means so much to me. You also have death in that story because sometimes things die. And that's the other part of the story that just, for me today is what I focus on. Like, things die and people die. And every day is not going to be your turn, but you also can't be anxious and waiting for it to be your turn. You have to say, "Today wasn't, so I'm going to love the people in front of me." But the other thing to know is that every person has made it through a loss, and it happens to not be their day, but they've had their day. They've had that worst day of their life, the second worst day, the third worst day. And now maybe today or another day, so will you. But you'll get through it just like they got. We're all here in this suffering. We're all here in this loss. But the Buddhist principle of this story is not about the death. It's actually about the universality of suffering, that we're all connected, that we're all a part of this human experience and so far from perfect. And in Buddhism, is you really take a chance to love someone because they believe that suffering is inevitable. Well, pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. You really suffer when you hold on to things too tight. But love is that one exception that we all decide to hold on to. And it's so worth it, right? It's so worth the pain I feel to have loved two people so deeply. It's so worth it as well. I didn't talk about my cousin Jonathan passing um, in a car accident a couple years before any of this happened. But so worth it. I do it all over every time. All of you thinking about who you've lost, thinking about what you lost, thinking about the chances you took. When you do it over to have that love in your life, like, come on. So remember that it's going to get better. But this opportunity we had to have love and to have loss, unmatched. It's terrible, my friends like, unmatched that I got to do it. I'm glad you got to do it too. So may peace be with you, and peace wrap itself around all the things that you want to lay here on our little altar. And may all the things be free in your life, and may your heart be free and your mind be free. And may you find peace wherever you find yourself. All right. Amen. Yeah, Shay. It may be so.